Great Falls, Montana. Population 59,351, give or take a few. 25,500 households, and well over 15,000 families. There are 20 public schools in Great Falls, 2 high schools, 1 alternative high school, 2 middle schools, and 15 elementary schools. And unlike other Montana communities, Great Falls has, though limited, a quality early public education program for preschool children.
We had preschool classrooms out in some of the elementary buildings, and those classrooms were primarily made up of students who had some type of disability. They were identified as students with special needs. So by law, we have always provided preschool education for those students.
Well, I think what really started the ball for this preschool was the stimulus package that came through, and that Great Falls Public Schools received double federal dollars. An opportunity to actually do things that we had only dreamed of.
The district was already supporting 4 classrooms, morning and afternoon, for special needs students. So there was no cost to that. That was coming in through our state and federal dollars. But it was adding the same age component, same age peers, that was so critical, and the curriculum that grant allowed us to have.
Great Falls has always had an early childhood coalition from the community who had an interest in early childhood. They had been meeting for years prior to the opening of this center.
In the summer of 2009, school district officials and agency members with vested interest in the project, Benefis Health Systems, Quality Life Concepts, and Head Start, toured the city in a school bus in search of the perfect property.
We wanted to enlarge the footprint of opportunities for children before they entered school, rather than take away from anybody that already had business.
A clear favorite quickly surfaced, the Skyline School building. Mothballed and dark for the last 5 years and yearning for a new life. They'd found their home.
Well, I applied for every grant possible for preschool funding to bring in the dollars, because we knew we had to have the funding outside of this community's funding.
Though the successes of quality early education are undeniable, Montana remains one of the small handful of states that budgets nothing to support it. Having operated totally on federal funding since inception, the Great Falls program has been able to operate to this point. Without state funds, many other districts are critically restricted.
IDEA, which is the special education dollars, have always been around since the 70s. From there, we used Early Reading First grant money. We then applied for another grant called Striving Readers, and that got us 4 more years of funding. We then qualified for a Montana Preschool Development Grant, and we are currently in that stage of funding right now.
Superintendent of Great Falls Public Schools, Tammy Lacey.
There is this need, and we need to provide it as a society, because the return on that investment is significant. It's important for the economy of our communities moving forward that we make sure that our students can be successful in the K-12 environment.
We have such a demand for the spots that we have available in the classrooms. We take phone calls on a daily basis. We also have an open enrollment in April. And at that enrollment, we tell families that this process is just the application process, but that they will get a phone call to learn if their child got a spot into the program. And we call that a lottery system. In giving that explanation to one day to the mom, and she said, if you call me and tell me that we have a spot, we will feel like we've won the lottery.
Next year we will probably have about 800 4-year-olds in our community. I would estimate that half of those children are in private preschools and in very enriching settings, but half, 400 students, I think would be able to benefit, and their parents would desire to have their children in a public free preschool. We only are able to provide about 1/4 of those students with the preschool opportunity. It's heartbreaking.
Ezra likes to do what Ezra wants to do, and so that is, something that we had to work on. I'm really happy that I got Ezra into this program. He needed that structure, definitely, to be able to socialize, share, follow directions, because he's a very strong-willed child and wants to do what he wants to do, but, you know.
The gradual exposure to the orderly regime of school, to some, is daunting. Patience, order, and being on their best behavior challenges most.
Our kids are leaders in the kindergarten classroom from the beginning of the year. They're able to follow 1- and 2-step directions, procedures. They know and understand how a classroom works and looks, and what it looks like to go through a whole school day. And on top of all that, our full-day program provides them with the endurance level they will need to perform in full-day kindergarten.
I see students who come in with little to no fine or gross motor skills, and they leave us with lots of fine and gross motor skills. They're able to start to write their first and their last name. They're able to spell their first and their last name.
To some, even the experience of riding the school bus is in itself a foray into a social opportunity with a larger group of their peers than they may be used to.
In fact, one of the funny stories is the very first day we opened. We were all up there, we're all standing outside, the bus pulls in, and I looked at the teacher and said, "Oh my gosh, it's empty." We didn't realize our children were so tiny that we would not see them in the bus. They were below the windows.
A student population that starts K through 12 school not ready to learn due to limited or no quality early education many times suffers a vocabulary deficit of hundreds of words from which they may never recover.
You know, my job starts with kindergarten and having kids ready to succeed in kindergarten. But I also see the flip side as those kids that come to us that have not experienced this type of environment. The opportunity to be exposed to the literature, the games, the rhythm, the music. And so when you look at those two kiddos side by side, certainly that begins to develop achievement gap. An achievement gap that it's hard to make up by the time they enter into kindergarten.
The connection between school and incarceration is staggering. The number of adult prison inmates without at least a high school education, or at the worst being illiterate, is sadly disproportionate to the rest of society.
The road to incarceration or to jail is preventable. If we get our children involved, such as early education, high quality preschools, we can get them on the right path so that they do turn out to be good, productive citizens.
The correlation between a strong focus on quality early childhood education and a drastic reduction in school dropout rates is substantial. The lack of investment in our children over time generally leads to a bad outcome.
Go ahead, 28. I'm going to be 10-15 with one adult male.
80% of the males in Montana State Prison are high school dropouts. 75% of the females in the Montana State Women's Prison are dropouts. We have to break that cycle. We have to start with this new generation. Let's pay for it now, so that years to come, you're not going to be paying the sheriff of Cascade County for incarceration.
Children who participate in successful, high-quality preschool education programs, they are more likely to graduate from high school and more likely to go on to college. Research also shows that students are less likely to need any kind of public assistance later in life. They're less likely to need remediation or special education during school, and they're 70% less likely to be incarcerated or involved in the criminal justice system.
The Great Falls Early Ed program supports the model of inclusion and offers life-changing advantages for students with special needs, most often identified because they have limited language.
Having speech therapy available here, occupational therapy and physical therapy all under one roof. They work on a specific skill in isolation. They also may be working on it with benefits or in a clinical setting. They then bring that skill into preschool and have opportunities to practice that skill. Not only do they hear adults talking, but now they're hearing 15 of their peers using a lot of that common language that they've been working on in an isolated setting.
The Early Education Center Library, generously provided by many in the community through the Great Falls Public Schools Foundation, is an integral part of the education process where children, many for the first time in their life, experience the power of books. Featured in the library is the award-winning Caldecott collection of children's books, donated to the library by retired teacher and friend Janie Nicholson, who on this day stopped by to read to the children.
This man is one of my favorite writers. And I say if we're going to get a handle on education, we've got to start younger rather than older. And politically, we're talking about we must have college for everyone, and I'm not opposed to everybody going to further education, but they've got to have a start to do it. And they've got to be happy and contented. And you look at these kids here today, and they're all having success at whatever level they are.
There is, within the community of state officials, much interest in funding Montana's quality early public education.
We have had a limited approach toward public preschool in Great Falls for several years, and the results are really incredible in terms of the difference it makes for young children and their ultimate success in school itself.
Many Montana legislators have toured Skyline and other schools to learn firsthand the amazing benefits of early education, fostering a steadily growing positive consensus among the ranks.
Preschool education is critically important to our younger kids coming along. We're competing in a global economy, and we need to give them every advantage that we can. There's no question about the science of it. It's a proven fact that the earlier that we can start educating our children, the better off they're going to be. So early education is just very, very important, and it's something we've got to do.
In 2015, the Early Edge Montana Initiative was introduced to the legislature.
This is one of the best investments that we can make in economic development. We know that $1 invested in early childhood education can have a $7 to $9 return. Last legislative session, I proposed a program, Early Edge, would have been $37 million, voluntary from the child and parents' perspective, but also voluntary from the school district. If the school district wanted to put together a quality program, they could, and it could go through the school district, a Head Start, other community-based providers.
The Early Edge Montana Initiative failed to pass in the 2015 legislative session.
And you hear, well, often it takes, a few sessions to move these things forward. But I don't think that we have year after year to get to the point that other states already have.
We owe it to our children to try and make sure they get early childhood education because I think it's made a huge difference for Harper, and I feel confident that when she goes into kindergarten, she's going to be prepared.
Also, parents that have a comparison of their children who maybe didn't get this opportunity and then those who did are just noting just remarkable differences in the readiness of their child.
Where we spend to create a common good says a lot about our society.
We spend our money on a lot of things, right? And some things that we complain about and some things that we take for granted. And I think education of our children, of setting them up, the next generation, is one of those things that you just can't take for granted.
Is it more important to spend money on early childhood education, or should we wait and pay people welfare? Should we incarcerate them and pay later? Because we didn't address the problem early enough.
We invited the governor one time, and I said, do you know the song Wheels on the Bus? And so when the governor of Montana came and walked in line with these 3, 4, and 5-year-olds, we were imparting that love of learning. They loved being there. It would make you cry.
I want Harper to be successful. I want her to be smart. And I want her to just live happily. Be independent. Love you. Love you.
Are we really the land of opportunity? If, with the knowledge we possess, we fail to give our children their best opportunity to learn and succeed?
If you want to be part of that conversation, I think we all need to choose our battles wisely. And I think this is something that this is a battle worth having.
Embedded in our citizenship is a simple moral principle: our responsibility to take care of each other.